Right here.
Spell check on that program.
Better eye on that.
I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jacksonville Planning Advisory Board to order. This time we'll be led with the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Forney and communication by Mr. Keys.
I pledge the allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Almighty God, thank you for this time and this privilege to participate in a meeting for the city. And Lord, we pray that you would be with us as we discuss the business of this city and give us wisdom, Lord, to make appropriate and proper decisions. We pray for the city council and all of the officials of this city. We pray for our military men and women and just for this community of Jacksonville as a whole. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Thank everyone for tuning in. You must really be bored if you're watching us on G10. No, I'm just kidding. At this time, are there any changes to the agenda? If not, a motion to approve would be in order.
Move to approve the agenda.
Motion by Ms.
Second.
Vanderveer, second by Ms. Moore. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion approving the agenda, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion passes. Review and approval of the minutes, January 14th. That was our last meeting. Everyone's got those?
And a spirited meeting at that?
Very good meeting, very productive, very good input by everybody. Hopefully we did some good things.
Move that the minutes be approved as written.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second?
Second by Mr. Forney. Motion was by Mr. Keys, second by Mr. Forney. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes.
Sorry, I can't exclude myself since I was stuck in DC in a snowstorm.
We're glad to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be back.
City Council update. Councilman Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing to report. What she told me.
We didn't hear anything on the discussion we had on the UDO amendment that we discussed.
They brought it to us to a workshop and have not brought it back to a regular council meeting where we just had some questions and some of the same concerns y'all had, and he's gone back and he's getting ready, I think, to bring it up. Probably you think we'll see it this next council meeting?
No, it'll be the second meeting in April, which is the first public hearing city council meeting. We've sent out the Survey Monkey to the council to find out, to get some of the clarity based on the concerns that they raised, so that we can finalize the amendment.
Really nothing much different from what y'all raised, so, in my opinion, that was my impression. Was that okay?
There being no old business, we'll go right to new business. Who's up?
That would be me.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Advisory Board, Councilman Ward. The first item on tonight's agenda is 2408 Commerce Road, a map amendment rezoning, proposed rezoning from OI, office institutional, to corridor commercial, or as I'll mention throughout the presentation, CC. Notice the vicinity map and the location close to Western Boulevard. This is aerial photography showing that the parcel in question is partially developed. Again, it's 2408 Commerce Road, and you see it's near the corner of Western Boulevard. Currently, the property is zoned office and institutional. The property to the north is also O&I. Properties to the east are zoned single-family residential. Excuse the spelling error. I copied it over on several maps. We'll have that corrected by the time this goes to the council next week. Properties across Commerce Road and to the south are zoned corridor commercial as well. Before you on the screen is the future Campbell land use map. It shows in the bright hot pink is regional commercial. This subject parcel is along with those other parcels along Western Boulevard, regional commercial. The map before you here shows what the parcel will look like if it is successfully rezoned. Through the research, staff has did courtesy notices to all adjacent property owners. We posted a sign on the property. This rezoning is supported by the Campbell land use plan, and the regional commercial supports this type of zoning. And staff is recommending approval of this rezoning, which has been submitted by Bailey and Ford Properties. They're represented by Chris and Warren Bailey and Mr. Keith Felton. The staff is recommending approval with findings of fact A through J being found in the affirmative. And I would like to correct that recommendation. It's not making an existing nonconformity conforming. It's actually advancing the public interest by creating more development opportunities and more closely aligning the zoning with the Campbell future land use map. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Jeremy, while you've got this map up, I do have a question. Where it says vacant RC,
Yes, sir, and I will list that when the property is not actually in operation as vacant. It is developed, but it is not being operated as a car lot no longer.
but as RC, that is,
RC, that's regional commercial. There's a
Okay.
carryover, again, there's several typos on the map, that should be a CC for corridor commercial.
Okay.
Leave it here for just a second. Mr. Chairman, if I may. Bailey and Associates recently acquired this property as well. And so the state, this is a 2016 ortho image. So this was what it looked like prior to them purchasing it. Because I know that during our discussions when we were preparing this agenda item, we noticed that, number one, there's actually a building that was there. I was thinking it was vacant before we started looking into it. And there's actually a business building that was located there that was damaged by the storm. But also that at some point between 2012 and 2016, the natural buffer that may have been there in the past was removed at some point. And that would be a condition of any type of commercial development in the future would be to meet the type A buffer standards. So just to kind of throw that out there in advance of your deliberation.
My concern would be, and perhaps overlooked it, at the rear of the property that's adjacent to the single-family housing. Will there be a requirement for a buffer and lighting for that?
Yes, sir. If this property is redevelopment, which, obviously if it's rezoned, they would have access to anything within the corridor commercial district use table. But as is redeveloped, a 30-foot type A buffer would be required along that boundary. And the lighting standards would have to meet those for properties that are directly adjacent to residential property, which means a decrease in lighting pole height.
I am correct, right? There is no such thing as RC.
No, sir. Again, that was, if you'll notice when I do the future land use map, it's an RC. It was a typo carryover. It should be CC.
All right, so the property that's right there on Western Boulevard.
It's also zoned corridor
CC,
commercial.
that's CC.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All the
maps just
the
give you
light
updates.
beige pink
Okay.
is existing corridor commercial. And that's as the property is now, of an eye adjacent to the residential and the commercial. If council were to approve this next week, this is what it would reflect.
Sure. I'm just trying to keep some consistency here.
Am I correct that one of the differences between the use is a restaurant with drive-through service is not allowed in OI,
Yes, sir.
but is allowed, is
It
permitted?
is, but it's unlikely it would work in this property because we have a separation from the order box to be 100 feet from any residential boundary.
Those are the use-specific standards in Article 4.2 that we didn't have prior to the UDO. So there's additional standards for different types of businesses. That's the last column in the use table.
Now, there could be a drive-up pickup, but that order box would have to be strategically located, and I don't believe there would be a good way for it to function on this property unless it was shoved much closer to Western Boulevard.
And it's got an odd frontage anyway.
Well, you'll never get, you won't get access directly to Western Boulevard by this property.
No. Since the same property owner owns that corner lot, they could combine and have their access there, but that would be something for DOT to weigh in on. But there are existing driveways on Commerce, and I would not expect a direct access to be made on Western that close to that intersection.
But the addition of both parcels, and you might as well think about it as both parcels, but the addition of both parcels allows the developer some room to put things like retention ponds and things that wouldn't fit in a small lot, but now, because you've got more room,
That's right.
you're able to spread it out and possibly do some things that you
That's
couldn't
right.
do before.
What are some of the uses for CC?
Well, the O and I is, as it says, is office and institutional, that's your offices, churches and what have you.
Okay.
Your CC is going to be is our most intense commercial district. That's your retail, wholesale, banks, hospitals, schools, shopping centers, just to name of the few big items.
Okay.
But again, the size of this property is going to constrain some of those.
One other thing to keep in mind is that between the two properties, there is a drainage easement with a stormwater pipe that traverses that area. So that's going to also limit, I mean, you can drive over it, you can park in the area, but it would keep a building from being placed at that location.
So you could cover it, but you couldn't park on it.
You can't build on top of it.
You can't build on
Can't
top of
build,
it.
you can park.
Well, and let me, you may be able to pave over top of it. You know, from a stormwater standpoint, you don't want pipes in the ground. You want it to be able to infiltrate into the groundwater. You want it to not be piped from an environmental stormwater standpoint. So I don't want to say yes for sure. I mean, it's possible if it can meet the criteria and the standards, whatever they may be. They may have to leave it open. But I mean, there's a feature that there does impact the developability of that site in that area.
I noticed that, you know, well, for lack of anything better, the single-family residential that is, for lack of anything better, the blue roof, they back up to commercial corridor on Western.
Correct.
The area just north of that seems to have a very large green area, if that's still there. And is because of the triangular shape, it provides a little bit of extra protection, but I'm just bringing that up.
And it's, while this is an older subdivision in terms of development, it predates our current UDO, this would actually be what if it was to be developed under a UDO and this, I mean, you would end up having that kind of buffer on both sides. So in essence, that's going to work great when this property, if it redevelops and that buffer's installed, you'll have ended up essentially a very wide buffer in between both the residential and the commercial.
In fact, as it is right now, the greenish roof house is backing up to a
Correct.
gas station.
Yep. At the bottom of the picture.
That's correct. That would be
Yeah.
the Speedway.
Yes. Everything we've heard is pros. Any cons?
Ryan, does our, and I hate to throw this out because I know what you're gonna say. Are there any, does either this board or city council have a tag they can put on commercial corridor to restrict what kinds of things could go there if it gets rezoned commercial corridor?
This board nor council can, but the applicant can request that. And if the applicant feels that the decision is going in a nature that a conditional CC would be more effective, then the applicant can offer that up and say, hey, you know, if it makes council feel better, I'm willing to submit that we strike this, and these uses from that and make it a conditional corridor district or conditional corridor commercial district. We've done that 2 or 3 times since the EDO was adopted. And it's very possible, we've discussed that with Mr. Bailey as an option. So if we go further down the road here, that to be willing to have looked at that use table and be willing to strike some items there to, you know, give us that, maybe that comfort level.
Because you may find that the residents that back up to that will say, well, we don't want this, this, and this. And Mr. Bailey may be saying, well, I'm not even thinking of those things. But
Right.
I'm willing to, so,
Correct.
yeah, you know, we're fine with that.
And staff tries to be proactive, which we were, and we have floated that idea. And if, I would suggest also that, I mean, if planning board has some concern, I mean, that's part of what this board does. I'd float them out now so that, you know, the applicant can think about that moving forward, and it may change, you know, the process and You know, if you have those concerns, and that's part of you being a sounding body, and if you have those concerns.
Well, let me kick this out too. I notice as you go further down Commerce, you'll see it's zoned Office O&I, Office O&I. And am I correct, Commerce is slated for connection to Piney Green?
Correct.
So that will make that a more of a, for lack of anything better, a business not a thoroughfare, but just more business oriented.
Certainly possible.
Yes.
So you may be seeing more places along that deciding to try to take advantage of that. Saying. Because now you run the possibility of having a row of commercial corridor between your Commerce Road and your single-family residential. Which I don't, that's not what we planned, you know.
And we would look at the CAM land use plan for guidance as well. At this particular location, in this particular instance, the CAM plan supports this proposed change.
And you said they could do it conditional? Is that what you said?
The applicant could revise their application to a conditional zoning district.
And exactly what would the different conditions be?
That would be set up by the applicant. It could be use limitations, it could be, as long as there's a condition that makes it separate and distinct. It could be one thing. They could take and mark one use off. And as long as they comply with that condition with the development plan, or if they proposed, say they proposed a 35-foot buffer, as long as when the development plan comes in, staff ensures that those conditions are complied with as adopted by city council, then it could be a staff-approved plan. It wouldn't necessarily be, a lot of us remember the old conditional use permit process where it would require a conditional use permit or a special use permit. The conditional zoning doesn't work that way anymore. It's handled by staff. As long as it's permitted use, we make sure the conditions are complied with and approve it through the staff level, management report level of council, or a city council public hearing item, depending on what's required for the use.
I know the applicant's here tonight. Is there any, normally I don't get into this, but is there anything that the applicant could share with us that would enlighten us upon not necessarily what's going in there, but help us in our decision process?
Of course, we're just trying to get it all combined,
Sure.
you know, for one,
Yeah, I'm not-
one property. I don't, to my knowledge, no contract signed or nothing of that nature, but in any event, you know, we have reached out to the adjoining
You know what
property.
we do, don't you?
And you know, I understand that Mr. Bailey has talked to two of the residential property owners, and they did not, to him, express any opposition. I don't think they expressed any opposition to staff. They have, I'm not aware of. The third owner, the one that the focus, I think he's been unable to reach. He left messages for me, has not talked to him. But to our knowledge, the staff is, supports this. I don't know of any opposition from any member of the public. When I say they basically, I think one of them even told me, he's already thought it was commercial. He just assumed it was, and that's someone that's in the state legislature and highly knowledgeable. So he just assumed that it already had been zoned that way. So I just asked y'all to, consider the lack of opposition and
Well, that helps me. Like I said, I'm not looking for what's going in there. I tend to stay away from those questions if all possible. It's not that, it's just that if you've reached out, you've done due diligence, you've talked to the property owners, they're all on board and it's like, okay, that helps me in my process of thinking.
But two of the three he talked to, the third one he did call, but he was not able to reach.
Couldn't get up with the third one, but we've talked to everybody else except, and called him, or whoever that is. I think it's a Gibbons or someone. We've called him dozens of times. But all the others, as I said, as he said, they said they thought it was already zone commercial.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, I don't know if everybody here knows what we do, but it's all over town. And,
I know what you mean.
in keeping, with what we do. We don't build livery stables and,
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I move that, we approve the rezoning request accepting the evaluation found with the staff report for findings of fact A through J being found in the affirmative.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Second, Mr. Keys. Any more discussion? Thank you for that motion.
Well,
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, like. Motion passes.
thank you very much.
I would just add to that this
It'll
will,
be nice.
this will be going to city council in April.
When does it go? April 2nd?
April
On the 16th and 19th.
We did send courtesy notices to property owners, letting them know about the planning board. Those folks who've gotten those notices know that their opportunity to speak doesn't come until they get in front of our city council, and they will get another meeting notifying of the public hearing. But it does give us a good amount of time that if any issues do arise, that the applicant may have some time to edit their application.
I was just gonna say one more thing, is that we do appreciate your service. We really do. Sometimes this is a thankless job, and we need it. And we go to lots of places, and everywhere, you go, somebody will say, well, God, it's so hard to do business here, so hard to do business there. But I always tell them, Jacksonville is tough, and they are. When them crowd down there, they're tough, but it's fair.
And those three right there,
Thank you very much, okay?
that crowd.
Okay, Jeremy, you're up again. Agenda item B.
That's right. Item B is 201 Zach Circle, Military Fellowship Center. It would probably be quicker for me, just easier just to call it a church from this point going forward. They do church functions there, but they also provide other religious services, counseling and what have you. This is a special use permit and type 3 site plan. Notice the vicinity map before you between Zach Circle and South Shore Drive. This is aerial photography showing the existing property. Some background, what has triggered this is that in the current zoning district of RMF LD, religious institutions, or in this case church, are a special use. This property existed prior to the EDO. So after July 2014, this became a legal non-conforming use. And they now want to combine their two buildings with a small 528 square foot addition connecting their buildings. In order to let them do that, they need to get a special use permit approved. They've been through the site plan process. Site plan has been found to meet our standards. So now I'm bringing it forward to this planning board for recommendation to city council next week. We've been trying to get this in front of this board for a couple months. We've ran into some delays. Nothing real reasoning behind, just holidays and staffing. This is the site plan before you. Again, this is what's triggered their need to get the special use permit, is they wanted to do that 500 square foot expansion to connect those buildings. One issue that did come up during the project review is parking. This property has, in my efforts in finding history, has never had an issue with parking. They have used some on-street parking because it is allowed in that area if they've ever needed overflow. They've exhausted every effort to add more parking. Through this site plan review, they've been able to add one more. And our ordinance provides that as long as they are providing the maximum extent practical parking, they do not have to meet their minimum parking standard if they just feasibly cannot get more parking on the property. Because we could push the issue and say, you gotta have more parking, but we would end up creating more conflicts. And we don't feel that an access off of South Shore in order to get more parking on that side would be a good thing. So I just want to let you know that it does not meet their minimum criteria for parking, but there is a reason. Staff is recommending approval of this special use permit and type 3 site plan based on findings of fact A through G being found in the affirmative. Ms. Lori Morris with Parker & Associates is here, along with staff, to answer any questions that you may have.
How many, what they want to do to the building, is it going to increase the number of people coming?
Not necessarily, from my understanding, it's to make the site more fluid, so they're not going outside all the
Because I
time.
was reading about
Get
that
from one-
parking,
Yeah.
and what do they do, just park on the street, or, I mean, has there been any complaints from?
No, I had talked to Sergeant Sean McGill and his department over at the police department. They've not had any incidences or complaints with excessive parking.
So I didn't quite understand what that building would be.
Right.
Would it require additional parking?
If this was brand new, you'd probably have a smaller building in order to accommodate our current parking standard. But because they are not expanding the envelope of what their buildings encompass, that issue isn't being pushed any further. They're not losing parking. It's almost an interior expansion.
They just
Yes,
closing in.
that's right.
Yes, that's what I wasn't understanding.
Building a corridor between the two buildings.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Mhm. And you don't have to walk outside.
And you can't do that if you're not in the right zoning.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
Wow.
we're making that possible.
And you will see churches, I know another one that will be coming in the next few months. It's also in a residential zone, predates the UDO, and they want to pave their parking lot. You will most likely see that in front of this board and go to council too, so they can hopefully get that done. I always wonder that it's not a for sure thing, if there may be something that comes up that it does not work out. But in this case, staff feels that there should not be an issue.
So if you approve this and city council approves this, it will no longer be grandfathered or non-conforming. So if a church is not appropriate at this location, then, for one of the findings of facts, then this would be your chance to say, you don't need to expand and you need to remain grandfathered, because eventually it will go away. I'm not suggesting that you do that, I'm just pointing that out.
I would be concerned if this was going to increase their membership, because that would mean more parking, and since parking is such an issue. But what they're doing would not increase the membership, right?
And Lori may want to add on
You
to.
never know that.
Yeah, you don't
Obviously,
know.
with any church, they're
You
looking to
always
increase
look at-
membership. But I think it's more of a functionality thing to make the buildings function together more as one. I will say, you could look at it as two or one benefit that we're getting. City requires sidewalks on South Shore Drive, so there will be sidewalks installed here. And we will be receiving a fee in lieu of payment for Zach Circle side. So that's triggered with the type 3 site plan.
There's a large fence on the back of their property,
That's
right?
right. They
And
are.
that's coming down?
Yes, we'll push back.
Okay.
Where are they gonna get the extra parking space?
I'll flip over to the site plan, but it's right about in there. They're pushing down just a little bit. They have 6, they're getting 7
Uh-huh.
total. And there's the sidewalks. So an increase in our connectivity. Again, get to
If this were approved, is there anything else that they could do that they can't do just by being grandfathered in?
Not really. It just wouldn't be able to expand. They cannot physically alter the non-conforming use. They could remodel to an extent, repair, but they wouldn't be able to expand.
Now,
But
if you have
they-
a fire or tornado, then it may not be able to be reconstructed.
If it
Not
stays
approved.
grandfathered in,
Correct.
but if it's redone, then it can?
Then they could tear down and rebuild. But it would have to meet all the standards at that point.
It'd be a new site plan,
New
and this
code.
board would actually see that site plan again.
So this would just be really a assistance for them in case something were to happen?
Fixing the
That's correct.
non-conformity, that's correct.
Would this generate any kind of a buffer since?
No, all the adjacent property is zoned the same, so
Okay.
the way our UDO exists now, if it's the same zoning adjacent to it, then buffers are not triggered.
The perimeter lawn,
Now-
sorry. I was gonna say the perimeter lawn is triggered.
The perimeter lawn is triggered, and they will be installing a percentage of that. Now, that if this board sees fit that wants to add a condition to this special use permit, or recommend a condition that to install or increase buffers, you are welcome to do that. I don't know of any complaints from neighborhood. Again, we sent out courtesy notices for this meeting, and they also at the same time received their public hearing notices. I haven't gotten any questions or calls, and the signs have been on the property for about 3 weeks now.
Any other discussion? No?
Well, I motion to grant the special use permit based on items A through G found to the affirmative.
A second?
Second by Ms. Vandermeer, motion by Mr. Forney. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, like. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Reports.
Just a question.
Yes, sir.
What would happen if you did get parking complaints? Just curious.
Moving forward,
Yeah.
what's interesting is and sometimes I revert back to the old code in my mind, because I dealt with it for so long, but I think it's still in the UDO, that our code talks about existing buildings only have to provide parking that they can accommodate on site. So, I mean, this parcel is what it is. If it wasn't approved, or if it was approved, we could take action and make the street non-parking, but that also impacts the residents. And at that point, it becomes kind of a law enforcement situation.
How long has this been there, an active,
It's been there quite a long time. I would encourage you to go by the site if you haven't. I mean, they've done a great job in maintaining it. Other than the parking and the one sign they have on the South Shore side, it would almost look like another residence or building out there.
well, if over that period of time, there hasn't been any complaints,
And granted, this was just in Officer McGill's current, and him looking in, obviously I can't speak to 30 years ago, but in recent records, he didn't find anything.
They usually, with the technology, I mean, they can print out and look up any kind of reports pretty quickly. So what tells me is that nobody's called the, I won't say 911, but the public safety part of the house to make a complaint. So based on that, there was none to report.
you know how big of a congregation they have?
I do not.
I don't know that they actually have a church service.
Yeah, and that's, I don't.
I think they have an outreach to the military members. That's kind of what
That's right.
That's my impression of them.
A little bit like the USO, isn't it? A little bit like that.
Well, yeah, maybe, but it's more like, to me, like the navigators that have a mission to the military. It's
Yeah.
a place for them to meet
Understand.
and have Bible study more so than a church service, is
Yeah.
what I think.
They reached out to me about 3 years ago. This is how long this has been in the works. That's what was explained to me, that that they could entertain a Sunday service, but usually it's ministry services.
Mhm. That's how I understand it.
Ryan, you're up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a reminder, and it's at your place and this evening, and And we've talked about it the last month or two, and I know some of you have already turned it in, but the Citizen Advisory Committee Appreciation Dinner will be held next month, April the 9th, at 6 o'clock at 800 New Bridge Street, across the street at the Jacksonville Conference Center. We'd ask that you RSVP by March 29th. So feel free to let me, or if you're with another board, if you've already, I know Steve expressed that he's already let the other board liaison know. So just let us know if you plan to attend, RSVP by March 29th, and we hope you all, every one of you can attend that 6 o'clock appreciation dinner on April the 9th. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Again, we thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience tonight. Thank you for your participation. Hearing no other business, I'll now call this a motion to adjourn. Do I
I
hear a
will make
motion?
a motion to adjourn.
Second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we're out of here.
All in favor?